Simplifying Marxism, originally posted Monday, November 28, 2016. Marx, Lenin, Trotsky, and Arini. To my great pleasure, my friend and colleague Davis Arini started up his YouTube channel again. I enjoy his videos very much because I lack any formal education or training in philosophy, and his channel does an amazing job of separating the wheat from the chaff for people like me who have an interest in philosophy, but aren't stupid enough to waste 8 years studying it in college. So when his video, Lenin and Trotsky, Early Marxist Philosophers, and In-Depth Analysis was posted, I was excited because, while I am thoroughly familiar with the economic side of Marxism, I knew little of its philosophical underpinnings. So off I went, downloaded the video, converted it to an MP3, put it on my phone, and started listening to it over the course of my day. It was a 41-minute waste of time. Not because Mr. Arini did a poor job or somehow failed to make any kind of interesting philosophical insights, it's actually impossible for him not to, but because he made a mistake that ensured he wasted his time making the video, I wasted my time listening to it, and anybody else who studied communism wasted their time too. And that mistake was he stayed within these long-dead communists' frame, and in so doing lent credence, credibility, and legitimacy to faulty premises and arguments. Faulty premises waste our time. Not that I am against communist premises and arguments, I certainly am in a real world, but the point I'm trying to make here is one of argument and debate tactics. One of trying to advance one's philosophical understanding on anything, communism included, in the most efficient way possible. And if we operate from flawed, faulty, or what I contend is the case from the original communist philosophers, intellectually dishonest premises, all, and I mean all, time, effort, energy, and resources spent discussing it, debating it, and philosophizing about it are wasted. And communist philosophy is the epitome of what I'm talking about here. For example, take 2 premises about communism and what it is. 1. Communist philosophers' views on communism versus 2. My own. The communist philosophers' opinions and views on communism are lengthy, long, varied, diverse, and arguably limitless. They are complex, ever-evolving, and encompass completely new concepts, theories, and vocabulary that didn't exist a short 200 years ago. Karl Marx's Das Kapital alone is 610 pages. The essential works of Lenin only come in at 410 pages. Trotsky's History of the Russian Revolution is 1,040 pages, and that's just arguably the first 3 founding members of communism. You throw in the literally millions of pages that have been written by other communists, leftist journalists, propagandists, and perhaps most prolific writers of them all, academians, and there are hundreds of thousands of lifetime works dedicated towards communism, what it is, its theories, and its philosophies. Now replace all of that with my own personal take on communism. It's an excuse for lazy fucks to steal your shit so they don't have to work. And ask which premise is most accurate, more grounded in truth, and is therefore going to result in more progress being made about this political philosophy. Simplifying Marxism. To be honest, I don't have the time, and neither do you, to sit and listen to the fanciful blatherings of socialists in academia or the meandering, blathering screeds of long-dead and empirically disproven philosophers. And especially so in light of communism's abysmal historical, economic, and human rights track record. But more importantly, we need to step back, clear our eyes, and ensure we don't fall for the very first trap communists always lay. And that trap is that somehow their philosophy of communism is a philosophy at all. That it has merit. That the debate of communism is some kind of higher intelligence debate that is the preserve of PhDs, academics, and social scientists, and can only be argued within the confines of communist philosophy. We need to never accept this premise in the first place, rejecting their flawed frame, therefore avoiding the faux philosophical pablum and hokum that ensnared Arini, and did nothing to genuinely advance or resolve the debate about communism. So, permit me to offer a much more succinct, concise, and empirical explanation of communism that will save us all a lot of time, a lot of headache, tons of brain cells, not to mention explain what communism truly is and advance society more than Marx ever did. Communism is a method by which lazy people concoct reasons and rationales to steal other people's money legally. That's all it is. There's nothing more to it than that. They're lazy people, deathly afraid of work, labor, and toil, and instead of suffering the pain of work that all of us do, they'd rather spend lifetimes concocting reasons why the rest of society should be enslaved to provide them a free living. And that's precisely what they do. Academians constantly begging for more money in fake disciplines such as sociology, women's studies, or lesbian Portuguese anthropological studies, all so they can avoid the real world. Millennial college students forever perpetually putting off adulthood, demanding their student loans be forgiven so they could avoid the working world as long as possible. Politicians who find real work beneath them opt to instead divide us against one another, blaming those who work harder or, have more wealth for the idiotic mistakes or misfortunes of others. Non-profits and their army of employees always championing some cause or another, yet never solving it. And all of them, blaming people with more money as the cause of the world's problems, yet ironically demanding rich people's evil money as the solution. One could even argue that the true job of a communist, socialist, or leftist is to constantly come up with new reasons and rationales as to why they're disadvantaged, oppressed, discriminated against, etc., and therefore deserving of other people's life and labor. It makes me wonder if they had just put forth the same effort they did into parasiting off others towards productive endeavors in the real world, whether or not they'd all be millionaires. Regardless, if you look at people who advocate socialism, you will see them wasting nearly every minute of their finite lives begging, scamming, and demanding other people's money. Of course, none of this makes sense unless I provide some evidence. And the empirical proof I'd like to tender are the founders, supporters, and advocates of communism themselves. For if you look at them, the vast majority of them are precisely what my theory would predict they'd be. Rich, spoiled brats that hail from the upper classes of society who were so lazy and so fearful of real work, they spent the lion's share of their lives advocating the theft of others. And it is amazing how accurate and applicable this description is to all communists over the ages. Karl Marx himself hailed from a well-to-do family where his father was a lawyer and vineyard owner, allowing Karl to attend private schools and join a drinking club. Avoiding work with all of his might, Karl fancied himself a great philosopher, which led to his genuinely unintelligible writings, but also a perpetual parasitic reliance on others to support him. Most notably, Friedrich Engels, who was also a spoiled brat pampered son of a rich man. The irony that communism couldn't exist without first parasiting off capitalism should make one think. Vladimir Lenin, perhaps the original executor and implementer of socialism, was also not missing any meals in his childhood. His father, Ilya, was a rather well-to-do director in the school system in Russia. Despite the passing of his father early in life, there was enough money to send Lenin to university where he, like today's millennials, majored in protesting and not any kind of serious study. Mao Zedong, the son of an incredibly rich father, was just another spoiled brat in a different country, who ended up starving about 50 million of his own countrymen. And a little to his south, a few years later, would come Pol Pot, the son of a relatively well-to-do farmer, who would go on to study in France, which most of us never had the money to do, and kill only 2 million of his own countrymen. Both early adopters, advocates, and implementers of socialism. I could go on with historical communist figures, and you'd find a shocking majority of them were just spoiled rich kids who wanted to tell the world what to do, but you will see a similar, almost identical profile of people who advocate socialism, communism, and leftism today. Today's professorial class, especially in the liberal arts, are by far the weakest-minded, most fraudulent parasites in today's Western world. Not only are they too lazy to work real jobs, they're complete hypocrites living off the presumed beloved young. Having no real skills to offer society, they instead sell their fake trade to naive college students for $200 a credit and $150 per textbook. In exchange, these naive students receive a worthless piece of paper, sopping wet with rank leftist propaganda, so they're too brainwashed to realize how much they just got screwed over by their professors. Of course, to keep this racket up, the communist class of professors need a perpetual inflow of government money, and therefore it should not be surprising that they are the most fervent advocates of communism. Today's students are simply the proto-professorial class, most of them hailing from the Swipple white suburbs or flooded with tons of scholarship money because of their minority status or vagina. They too are spoiled children who, like Marx, Mao, and Lenin, find real work beneath them. Thus, when given the choice between majoring in engineering or political science, they'll choose political science because, once again, they're lazy and are deathly afraid of real work. Of course, just like Marx, Mao, and Lenin, this won't stop them from telling the rest of the world how to live, perhaps become parasitic professors themselves, but such intellectual hypocrisy won't bother them as they vote for Bernie Sanders to take your money so they can live the parasitic life of a professional student. Journalists, anyone? Speaking of lazy and worthless degrees, could there be a better major that more clearly declares to the world, I'm lazy, don't want to work hard, but want to have a job that strokes my ego? Their desperate desire for an easy and lazy life shines through with the horrendous political bias journalists have. And that political bias is, you guessed it, to the left. And politicians. Unless specifically anti-communist, nearly every Democrat/Labor/leftist, socialist, left-leaning political party in the world is staffed by worthless, lazy people, typically from rich backgrounds, who have the gall to not only demand other people work hard to pay for their salaries, but demand to be put in charge of the world's governments and thus rule the world. If there is proof that there's a second incentive or motive for communists and socialists beyond laziness/weakness/fear, it is ego. You see it in professors, protesters, college students, media, non-profit directors, and others, but nowhere is ego as prominent as it is in our politicians. So my question to you is, why would you bother wasting your time arguing the differences between Trotskyite communism versus Leninism versus Marxism when the entire political philosophy is explained in one word: parasitism? Why would you waste your time arguing at their pig and mud level when you can simply dismiss them all as lazy pigs? Communists, whatever their incarnation, be they historical figures, your university professors, your local Democratic politician, etc., are lazy, worthless, parasitic human beings who cowardly hide behind lofty and fabricated academic theories, solely created to steal your wealth, all while boosting their egos as they fool themselves into thinking they're somehow smart, educated, or superior. And if it isn't lofty, fabricated academic theories, it's rank and cowardly lies such as privilege, racism, the glass ceiling, etc. My life, as well as yours, is too damn short to tolerate these lazy, egotistical, and above all else, evil people. And I am not going to validate them by giving their arguments credit or trying to debate them using their premises. I'm going to simply call them what they are and dismiss them as such, because that's all they deserve. They're a bunch of spoiled brat, lazy, weak parasites.